Hildegard of Bingen was a German Benedictine nun in the High Middle Ages. Writer, botanist, philosopher, linguist, mystic, visionary, and a medical writer and practitioner. Did I also mention that she's one of the best known composers of sacred monophony, and yet we've never heard of her. Many in Germany regard her as the founder of scientific natural history. She's also known for the invention of a constructed language called lingua ignota. Although she had been revered for centuries as one of Catholicism's greatest minds, she was not officially canonized until 2012, where the Pope noted her as Doctor of the Church, finally recognizing her as a saint on a global scale. She founded monasteries. She wrote theological papers, as well as botanical and medicinal works. So you see, she's more than just a religious figure. Guys, we're talking an era where women weren't even allowed to read and write. So whether or not you believe in receiving visions from a higher power, you cannot deny the weight that held in the medieval era, especially if those visions came true. Since age 14, she was trained and educated in many skills, but her skill as a strong leader came naturally. When she was unanimously elected magistrate in her community of her fellow nuns, she put in the request for them all to move to a poverty-stricken Rupertsberg, where they could then build a monastery there. But her request was denied by her superior, so she went over the abbot's head to Archbishop Henry I of Mainz. Despite her position, Hildegard was an outspoken advocate to the popes, emperors, kings, calling for church reform and advocating for the downtrodden. She wrote in depth on the battle between vice and virtue, as well as detailing her concept of the microcosm and macrocosm, arguing that the human being reflects the divine structure of the entire universe. She was a philosopher, folks. Her idea of viriditas was one of the earliest known notions of the concept of living green, that humans have a responsibility to care for God's earth and creation. So she was an environmentalist too. As an abbess, she founded multiple monasteries and was the first woman to receive explicit permission from the Pope to write on Christian doctrine and preach to both men and women. She used her new position of power to speak on the corruption and simony in the church. At the end of her life, she could have lived in peace, but she defied the church one last time when they requested the exhumation of an excommunicated person buried in her convent cemetery. This resulted in an interdict that banned her nuns from taking communion and singing. She successfully fought this just before her death at 81 in 1179. So even then, she was fighting for human and civil rights up until the very end. Hildegard of Bingen transcended the strict limits placed on medieval women. Many monks from far and wide consulted her on her texts. And still, if none of this impresses you, you'll like this one. She wrote the earliest known mention of using hops to preserve beer. So you see, Hildegard of Bingen was an absolute icon in every way. Prost.